The sun on Eden's respite was warm and gentle. It shone through the large window of a small, quiet house on a hill. In the light, an old man named Park Ji-won carefully trimmed a bonsai tree. His hands moved with slow, steady purpose. He was focusing on a single, small branch. The room was silent except for the soft sound of his scissors. This piece was his reward. For decades, he had been Admiral Park Ji-won, a commander of great warships. He had fought in the Xenocide Wars, a terrible time when humanity nearly ended. He had given orders that ended star systems. He had seen things that still haunted his dreams. But that was long ago. Now he had his trees, his silence, and his peace. A soft chime came from the wall screen behind him. It was a news alert. He usually ignored them, but this one was marked with the highest priority. A red border flashed around the words. He put his scissors down slowly. He turned and read. The words were simple and brutal. Viridian hegemony claims navigation error led to destruction of New Thessia colony. 12 million souls lost. Ji-hwan did not gasp. He did not cry out. His hands, which had just been so careful with the tiny tree, did not shake. He simply stood there, his shoulders slumping a little. He closed his eyes. He saw not the news report, but memories. Memories of old dark protocols. Plans made in the worst days of the war. Buried deep and meant to be forgotten. They were for a threat that would not listen, that understood only absolute force. They were called the zero-tolerance protocols. He was the only person left alive who was authorized to use them. He walked to his kitchen and poured himself a glass of water. His mind was not on the room around him. It was in the past. He remembered the arguments, the fear. They had built a final, terrible weapon, not a new ship or a bomb, but a system, a key, and he was the one who held it. As he stood by the sink, his personal communicator buzzed. It was an old, blocky device from his military days. He had not heard it make a sound in 10 years. He picked it up. There was no video, no sender ID, just a single line of text. The garden has been salted. Park Ji-hwan let out a long, slow breath. The code phrase. It was real. He typed a single word in reply. Acknowledged. He walked to his bedroom and opened a heavy chest at the foot of his bed. Inside, beneath old blankets, was a simple gray admiral's uniform. It bore no medals, no rank pins. It was the uniform of his retirement. He put it on. The fabric felt strange against his skin after so long. Meanwhile, in the glittering core of the galaxy, a very different scene was taking place. In the Great Hall of the Galactic Concord, a tall reptilian creature named Ambassador Kalen stood before the assembled species. His scales shimmered under the lights. He spoke with a voice that was full of pride and a complete lack of care. The Viridian hegemony expresses its regret for the tragic accident at the human outpost of New Thessia, Kalen said, not sounding regretful at all. A navigational error in one of our fleet exercises led to an unfortunate discharge of energy. It is a great loss. He looked around the room, his yellow eyes passing over the representatives of other worlds. However, he continued, the hegemony must note that the human colony was established in a zone of known military activity. The humans knew the risks. We hope this incident will encourage humanity to reconsider its expansion into territories where stronger species operate. The message was clear. It was not an apology. It was a warning. It was a way of saying you are weak. We are strong. Be grateful we did not step on more of you. Back on Eden's respite, a small, sleek shuttle landed silently in the field next to Ji-hwan's house. The hatch opened and a woman walked out. Her name was Lee Soo-jin. She wore the practical uniform of a human fleet captain. Her black hair was tied back neatly. Her face was calm, but her eyes were serious. She walked to Ji-hwan's front door. It was already open. He stood there waiting for her, dressed in his gray uniform. He looked like a ghost from another time. Lee Soo-jin came to a sharp stop in front of him and saluted. Admiral Park, she said, her voice clear and respectful. Captain Lee, Ji-hwan replied with a slow nod. He did not salute back. The stealth ship Morningstar is in high orbit and awaiting your command, sir, she said. Your authorization code for protocol Hold My Coffee has been verified and accepted. Ji-hwan almost smiled at the name. It was so human, so casual for something so dark. He looked past her, at his bonsai tree on its stand by the window. He had spent 5 years shaping that tree. He would not see it again. The Viridian hegemony, he said, his voice low. They think it was an accident. They think we are weak because we choose peace. Yes, sir, Captain Lee said. The intelligence reports confirm their ambassador's speech was a deliberate act of disrespect. They are testing us. They failed the test, Ji-Hwan said. He stepped out of his house, pulling the door closed behind him. He did not look back. They wanted to see if the old stories about humanity were true. They are about to find out. He walked with her towards the shuttle. The protocol allows for 5 days, Captain. From the moment of activation. I am aware, sir, she said. The clock started when you sent acknowledged. Good, Ji-Hwan said. He paused at the foot of the shuttle ramp and looked up at the blue sky of the world he was leaving. Then tell your chief engineer to put the coffee on. The very strong stuff. We have a lot of work to do. The shuttle door closed behind them. A moment later, it lifted off without a sound, quickly disappearing into the sky. Down below in the quiet house on the hill, the bonsai tree sat alone in the sun. The old man who cared for it was gone. The war he had left behind had found him again. But this time, it would not be a war of fleets meeting in battle. It would be something else. It would be a lesson. The silence on the bridge of the Morning Star was a different kind of quiet than the one Park Ji-Hwan had known on his farm. This was the silence of deep space and advanced machinery. The ship itself was a marvel, a long, dark vessel that seemed to drink the light from the stars around it. Its hull was designed to scatter sensors, making it almost invisible. It was not a warship, it was a ghost. Captain Lee Soo-jin stood beside the command chair, her hands clasped behind her back. She watched the admiral. He stood before the main viewing screen, which showed nothing but the endless black dotted with pinpricks of light. He had not moved for a long time. A young man with wide, curious eyes approached the captain. This was Chul, the ship's chief engineer. He was brilliant with machines, but new to the fleet. He had never seen anything like the systems on this ship. Captain, Chul whispered, not wanting to disturb the admiral. I have been studying the ship's schematics. There are whole sections. I don't understand them. The power core, the drive. It's not like anything I've seen. What is our mission? Lee Soo-jin kept her eyes on Ji-Hwan. We are a delivery service, Chul, she said, her voice calm and low. We are delivering the admiral to a specific set of coordinates. And we are delivering a message. A message? To the Viridian hegemony? Yes, she said. A very simple one. Finally, Ji-Hwan moved. He walked to a terminal that looked older than the rest of the ship's equipment. He entered a long series of codes. The screen in front of him lit up with simple white text on a black background. It was an interface from another century. Across human space, in the dark and silent places between stars, things began to wake up. A listening post hidden inside a comet's icy core powered on its antennas. A weapon platform disguised as a piece of space rubble rotated its hidden lenses. 1,000 tiny probes, no bigger than a human hand, floating in the atmospheres of gas giants or buried in the dust of dead moons, received a signal and activated. This was the garden that had been salted. It was not a weapon of destruction. It was a weapon of knowledge. It was a web of eyes and ears that humanity had woven during its darkest fear and then forgotten. On the main screen of the Morning Star, data began to flow. It was a river of information, stolen from the Viridian hegemony. It was every military communication, every civilian news broadcast, every private message between their leaders. Ji-Hwan scrolled through it, his face a blank mask. He saw troop movements. He saw supply lists. He saw the arrogant speeches of their generals. Then he found what he was looking for. It was a recording from the private chambers of the Viridian leader, Supreme Archon Valerius. The Archon was not a diplomat like Kalen. He was a warrior. The recording showed Valerius laughing with his advisors. The humans, he said, his voice a low growl. They hide in their little corners of space. They think their past makes them strong. It makes them relics. We did not make an error. We pruned a weak branch. Let us see if the rest of the tree has any fight left. Ji-Hwan stopped the recording. He turned to look at Captain Lee and young Chul. Chul's face was pale. He had heard the truth. It was not an accident. It was a test of strength, a cruel and murderous one. They wanted to see our fight, Ji-Hwan said. His voice was quiet, but it filled the silent bridge. They will. He turned back to the terminal. His fingers flew across the screen, sorting and filtering the stolen data. He was not looking for military secrets. He was looking for the truth of their empire. He found shipping routes for their food supplies. He found the locations of the power plants that gave energy to their worlds. He found the central hubs for their banking and money. They are like a man standing on a chair, Ji-Hwan murmured, more to himself than anyone else. He feels tall and strong. He does not see that the chair is made of rotten wood. Admiral? Captain Lee asked. They have built a big empire, Captain, Ji-Hwan explained. They have many ships, many soldiers. But it is all built on a simple idea. The idea that they are the strongest, that no one would dare to touch them. They have never had to protect the things that truly hold them up. The food, the power, the money. He stood up from the terminal. Their military is a fist. A very strong fist. But we will not fight the fist. We will show them that the arm holding the fist is weak. He pointed to a star chart on the main screen. A specific point lit up with a red circle. This is the Nexus, Ji-Hwan said. It is the main communications hub for this entire sector of the Viridian hegemony. Every military order, every status report, it all goes through this station. It is the brain for their fist. Chul looked confused. Are we going to attack it? But Admiral, our ship has no weapons. Not that I could find, anyway. Ji-Hwan almost smiled. It was a thin, cold expression. We do not need weapons, engineer. We have a key. He sat back down and began to type another code. This one was much longer. It was a string of numbers and letters that seemed to have no end. He was not sending a command to the Morning Star. He was sending a command to something else, something hidden near the Nexus station long, long ago. Set course for the Nexus, Captain, Ji-Hwan said, his eyes fixed on the screen. Do not engage. Do not even get close. Just put us where we can watch. Yes, sir, Lee Soo-jin said. She gave the orders to the helm. The Morning Star turned smoothly and slipped into the strange, silent realm of faster-than-light travel. The stars outside the window became long, thin lines of light. A few hours later, they arrived. They were far away from the Nexus, a safe distance. On the screen, the station looked like a beautiful, spinning metal flower. It was huge with dozens of docks. Several large Viridian battleships were parked nearby, their lights blinking. The Viridian fleet is on high alert, Admiral. Chul reported from his station, his voice nervous. Their sensors are active. They are looking for threats. They will not find us, Captain Lee said calmly. And they will not see this. Ji-Hwan pressed one final key. Activated, he said. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, on the surface of one of the Viridian battleships, a small patch of the hull changed color. It turned from gray to a dull, flat black. The blackness spread fast like a spill. Where it touched, the metal simply vanished. It did not melt. It did not explode. It ceased to exist, turning into a fine, silent dust. On the Nexus station, the same thing was happening. The blackness appeared in multiple places and began to spread. The station's lights flickered and went out. For a few seconds, you could see the outline of the great structure. Then the silent black dust consumed it. In less than a minute, the Nexus and the 3 battleships near it were gone, replaced by a wide, dark cloud of microscopic particles. There was no noise, no flash of light. It was the quietest destruction imaginable. On the bridge of the Morning Star, the only sound was Chul's sharp intake of breath. He stared at the screen, his mouth open. He looked from the cloud of dust to the old admiral who was calmly sipping a cup of coffee. What was that? Chul finally whispered. A relic, Ji-Hwan said. From a war we hope to forget. They called it a gray goo catalyst. It unmakes things. We planted the seeds for it in 1,000 important places long ago, just in case. He put his coffee cup down. The Viridian hegemony just lost its ability to talk to half its fleet. They do not know how. They do not know why. They only know that something they thought was solid and safe is gone. He looked at Captain Lee. That was the first word of our message, Captain. The next one will be louder. The silence on the bridge of the Morning Star felt heavier now. On the main screen, the cloud of dust that was once the Nexus station slowly drifted, catching the light of a distant star. It was a tombstone made of nothing. Young Chul could not tear his eyes away from it. His mind, which was so good with engines and wires, struggled to understand. A whole station, 3 warships, thousands of beings. Gone. Not with fire and noise, but with a terrible, quiet unraveling. He looked at Admiral Ji-Hwan. The old man was reading a new set of data on his screen, his face showing no more emotion than if he were reading the weather. The Viridian military networks are in chaos. Admiral, Captain Lee Soo-jin reported. Her voice was professional, but her knuckles were white where she held her hands behind her back. They are screaming to each other, trying to find out what happened. They have no leader to give them orders. The Nexus was their command center. Good, Ji-Hwan said without looking up. Confusion is a weapon. Fear is a better one. He turned in his chair. Chul, I need you to do something for me. Chul jumped a little. Yes, Admiral? The Viridian ships use a specific type of computer to navigate between stars. It is called a tachyon core. I am sending you a small piece of code. I want you to study it. Make sure you understand what it does. A file appeared on Chul's screen. It was a complex string of commands, but its purpose was simple and brutal. He read it, his eyes growing wider. Admiral, this is a virus. If it gets into their navigation system, it will scramble their coordinates. A ship could jump into a star, or into empty space between galaxies. They would be lost forever. Yes, Ji-Hwan said. That is what it does. Now how do we deliver it? Chul thought for a moment, his engineer's mind pushing past the horror to the problem. Their military communications are a mess, but they are still talking. They are using backup channels. If we can get into one of those channels, we could disguise the virus as a normal software update. They are desperate for information. They might install it without checking. A faint, approving nod from the Admiral. Do it. Chul's fingers flew across his screen. He wrapped the virus in a fake message that looked like it came from a high-level Viridian commander. It was marked Urgent Navigation Security Patch. He looked at Ji-Hwan. Ready, sir. Send it, Ji-Hwan said. The message shot out from the Morning Star, bouncing through the Viridian's own damaged communication network. It was like a poison seed floating down a river. They did not have to wait long. One by one, across the sector, Viridian warships began to disappear. Not in explosions, but in flashes of light as they attempted to jump to hyperspace. Some of the flashes were followed by a larger, brighter flash as a ship materialized inside a planet or a star. Most just vanished, their signals blinking out into nothingness, stranded in the endless, cold dark. On the bridge, they watched the icons on the star map flicker and die. A whole fleet gone in minutes. They are not just losing ships, Admiral, Captain Lee said softly. They are losing their ability to move, to control their territory. That is the point, Ji-Hwan replied. He took a slow drink of his coffee. An empire is not its soldiers. It is the roads between its cities. We are closing the roads. The next target was money. The Viridian hegemony was rich. Its leaders lived in great luxury, their wealth stored in vast computer networks. Ji-Hwan accessed another old protocol. He found the central banks of the hegemony. He did not steal their money. That would have been too kind. Instead, he sent another code. This one was a simple command. Erase. In the financial districts of 100 Viridian worlds, screens went dark. Account balances dropped to zero. The life savings of millionaires, the treasure of the ruling families, the funds for the military, all of it gone. Turned into nothing, like the Nexus station. The reaction was even faster this time. Without money, the Empire began to starve. Trade ships would not deliver food without payment. Soldiers would not fight without wages. The comfortable lives of the powerful were suddenly, terrifyingly, empty. Panic spread like a disease. It was no longer just a military problem. It was a collapse. On the Galactic Concord, Ambassador Kalen was a different being. His scales looked dull. His proud voice was now a frantic shout. He stood before the assembly, no longer making threats. This is not war. He cried out, This is madness. The humans are using cowardly weapons. They hide in the darkness and break our tools. They must show themselves. A human diplomat was present in the room. She was an older woman, her face calm. She waited for Kalen to finish his screaming. When it was her turn to speak, she stood slowly. Her voice was clear and carried across the silent hall. The Viridian hegemony destroyed a human world, she said. They called it an accident. We know it was a test. You wanted to see if humanity was still strong. You have your answer. She looked directly at Kalen. The destruction of your communications hub was not an attack. It was the period at the end of your sentence for New Thessia. You have written your story. We are simply reading it back to you. She paused, letting the words sink in. The Admiral is now writing the next chapter. Back on the Morning Star, Chul listened to the diplomat's speech. He felt a shiver. It was not a speech of anger. It was a speech of fact. It was cold and final. He looked at Admiral Ji-Hwan, who was still working. He was now targeting the hegemony's own planetary defense systems. He was turning their guns against their own factories. "Admiral," Chul said, his voice small. "They can't even fight back." "They can't even see us." Jihuan stopped typing. He looked at the young engineer. He saw the confusion and the fear in his eyes. "They are not fighting us, son," Jihuan said, his voice tired. "They are fighting a ghost. They are fighting the consequence of their own choice. We are not an enemy they can shoot. We are an idea. The idea that if you push humanity too far, we will not push back. We will simply remove you." He turned back to his screen. "An empire built on hurting others has no strong center. It is hollow. We are not breaking down their walls. We are just letting the air out. And now everyone in the galaxy is watching it deflate." He entered one final command. On a major Viridian industrial world, the great planetary defense cannons designed to shoot down invading fleets suddenly swiveled. They lowered their barrels. They aimed at the planet's own surface, at the great weapons factories that built the hegemony's ships, and they opened fire. The fourth day began inside the ghost ship. The air on the bridge of the Morning Star was still and cold. Park Ji-hwan sat before his old terminal, the blue light of the screen reflecting in his tired eyes. He did not look like a man who was tearing down an empire. He looked like a tired office worker at the end of a long shift. On the main viewer, a live feed from the Galactic Concord played silently. It showed the Viridian hegemony's ambassador, Kalen. The proud reptile was gone. In his place was a desperate creature. His words scrolled across the bottom of the screen. "A misunderstanding, a tragic error in communication. The hegemony offers its full and complete surrender. We will pay any price. We will give any reparations. We only ask that this silence stop." Ji-hwan picked up his coffee cup. It was empty. He looked at it for a moment, then put it down. "They are begging," Captain Lee Soo-jin said from her station. She had watched their enemy break over the last 3 days. There was no victory in her voice, only a quiet acknowledgement of fact. "They are not begging for the lives of their people," Ji-hwan replied, his voice a low rumble. "They are begging for their own power. They see it slipping away and they are afraid." He turned back to his screen. The data flowing in showed the complete collapse of the hegemony. Their fleets were stranded, lost in the dark between stars. Their money was gone, making their society stop working. Their own guns had turned on their factories, leaving their worlds without new ships or weapons. It was an empire dying of 1,000 cuts, and they had not even seen the knife. "It is not enough," Ji-hwan said. Chul, who was monitoring the ship's systems, looked up. His young face was pale. "Admiral? Their military is gone. Their economy is zero." "What more can we do?" Ji-hwan did not answer directly. Instead, he called up a new set of files. These were not military reports or financial records. They were shipping manifests, lists of cargo ships, records of farm production on Viridian core worlds. "An empire's like a body," Ji-hwan explained, his fingers moving across the screen. "The military is its fists. The money is its blood. We have broken the fists and drained the blood, but the body can still live for a while. It has a heart. And it has a stomach." He highlighted a planet on the star chart. "This is Viridia Prime, the heart. It is their capital. It is where their leader lives. It is the symbol of their power." Then he highlighted a string of other worlds. "And these are their breadbaskets. The worlds that grow the food for dozens of other planets. The stomach of their empire." He began to type new codes. These were different. They were not attacks. They were commands sent to the hidden probes and listening posts in Viridian space. "What are you doing, sir?" Captain Lee asked. "I am turning out the lights," Ji-hwan said, "and I am locking the pantry." Across the Viridian hegemony, a strange thing began to happen. On the agricultural worlds, the vast machines that tended the fields and harvested the grain suddenly powered down. The complex irrigation systems that watered the deserts stopped. The weather control satellites, which ensured perfect growing conditions, went silent. It was not a violent act. It was a quiet one. The food simply stopped being made. At the same time, on Viridia Prime, the power failed. It did not happen all at once. It started in the outer cities, then spread inward. The great lights of the capital city flickered and died. The screens that showed propaganda and news went black. The transportation systems ground to a halt. The planet was falling into darkness and silence. On the Morning Star, they watched the live feed from a news drone near Viridia Prime. The glittering jewel of the hegemony was becoming a dark, quiet rock. Then a new transmission came through. It was not from an ambassador. It was from the leader himself. Supreme Archon Valerius. He was in a dark room lit only by a single emergency light. His face, usually so proud and cruel, was now filled with a raw animal fear. To the human commander, he said, his voice shaking, "I am Supreme Archon Valerius. I give you my unconditional surrender. I will hand over control of the hegemony. I will stand trial for my crimes. I will give you my own life. Just, please, stop this. My people are starving. My world is dark. You have won. You have proven your strength. There is no need for more." The transmission ended. The bridge was silent. Chul looked from the black screen to the Admiral. He felt a tiny spark of hope. It was over. The leader had surrendered. What more could they do? Ji-Huan was still looking at his terminal. He had not even watched the whole message. "Admiral," Captain Li said carefully, "he has surrendered. He has offered his life." Ji-Huan finally looked up. He looked at Li Sujin and then at young Chul. His eyes were old and very, very sad. "It is too late for his surrender," Ji-Huan said. His voice was quiet, but it was final. It was too late the moment they destroyed New Thessia and called it a pruning. "But the lesson," Chul said, confused. "Haven't we taught them the lesson? Everyone in the galaxy has seen it." "The lesson is not for him," Ji-Huan said. He stood up from his chair. He seemed taller now, filled with a terrible purpose. "The lesson is for everyone else. For every other species that might look at humanity and think we are weak. For every future bully who thinks they can burn our homes without consequence." He walked to the main viewing screen and pointed at the image of Viridia Prime. Now dark and silent, they must see it through to the end. They must see what zero tolerance means. They must understand that when you try to exterminate us, the response is not a battle. It is an annihilation. It is a complete and total erasure. He turned to Captain Li. His face was a stone. The lesson must be completed. Set course for Viridia Prime. The morning star hung in the space near Viridia Prime. The planet below was no longer a jewel. It was a dark sphere, its cities invisible without light. Only the faint glow of fires showed where people were struggling in the sudden darkness. It was a world holding its breath. On the bridge, the mood was heavy. Captain Li Sujin stood perfectly still, her eyes fixed on the planet. Young Chul fidgeted at his station, his stomach tight with a sick feeling. He kept glancing at Admiral Ji-Huan, hoping to see some change, some hint of mercy. He saw none. Ji-Huan worked at his terminal. He was not looking at the planet. He was studying the star it orbited. The Viridian sun was a healthy yellow star. It had billions of years of life left. On his screen, he called up the file for a protocol named Starfall. "Admiral," Chul's voice was a nervous whisper. "The scans? There are still billions of people down there, civilians, families, children." "I know," Ji-Huan said. His voice was flat. It was the voice of a man reading from a list. Just as they knew about the 12 million families on New Thessia. The difference is they thought they could do it and face no consequences. "We are the consequence." Captain Li turned from the viewer. Her calm mask was gone. Her face was pale, her eyes wide with a horror she could no longer contain. "Sir, they have surrendered. Their empire is gone. Is this justice? This is annihilation." Ji-Huan finally stopped typing. He looked at her, and for a moment the old man from the farm was visible in his eyes. He looked tired down to his bones. "This stopped being about justice days ago, Captain," he said. "This is about memory. The galaxy has a short memory. It forgets pain that it does not feel itself. They will forget the story of New Thessia in a generation, but they will not forget the story of Viridia Prime. They will tell it for 10,000 years. They will tell their children, do not make humanity hit zero tolerance." He turned back to his screen. His finger hovered over the final command, "Admiral, please." Chul stood up from his chair, his hands clenched into fists. "There has to be another way." "There isn't," Ji-Huan said, and he pressed the key. Deep within the Viridian sun, a small dormant probe hidden centuries ago received its signal. It did not explode. It began to pulse, emitting a strange energy field. The effect was not immediate. For a long minute, nothing happened. Then the star began to change. A dark spot appeared on its surface, not a normal sunspot, but a patch of something wrong, something cold. The spot grew. Tendrils of darkness reached out from it. The star's light flickered. A massive eruption of solar plasma. A coronal mass ejection 1,000 times larger than any natural one burst from the star's surface. It was not a random explosion. It was a directed wave. A wave of fire aimed directly at Viridia Prime. On the bridge, they watched in silence. The wave of energy moved slowly, beautifully and terribly across the void. It was a wall of destruction taller than the planet itself. On Viridia Prime, the last thing anyone saw was the night sky turning bright, as if a second sun were rising. The planetary shields, already weakened by the power loss, flashed for a single second and then shattered like glass. The atmosphere burned away. The oceans boiled into steam. The very surface of the world turned to molten rock, then to glass. Every city, every forest, every last living thing was scoured away in a wave of pure stellar fury. It did not make a sound in the vacuum of space. The destruction was utterly silent. On the main viewer, Viridia Prime was now a glowing red-hot ball. A dead world. A monument. No one on the bridge spoke. The only sound was the low hum of the Morning Star's engines. Chul was crying silently, tears streaming down his face as he stared at the glowing ember that had been a living world. He felt sick to his soul. Captain Li Sujin slowly turned to face Admiral Ji Huan. Her professional calm was utterly broken. The question she had been holding back for 5 days finally broke free. Her voice was raw. "Admiral," she whispered, her eyes begging for an answer that made sense. "What have we become?" Park Ji-hwan looked away from the screen. He looked at the empty coffee cup he had carried with him for 5 days. He looked at his own hands, the same hands that had once so carefully shaped a tiny bonsai tree, that had held a cup of coffee on a quiet morning. The same hands that had just ended a world. He did not look at the dead planet. The question, "Captain," he said, his voice barely audible, "is not what we have become." He finally met her gaze, and his eyes were hollow, filled with a ghostly light from the dead world on the screen. "It is what they forced us to remember." He took a slow, deep breath, and whether the rest of the galaxy was watching, he turned his back on the viewer, on the glowing tombstone of Viridia Prime. "Take us home," he said. The Morning Star turned away from the dead system and slipped into the darkness, leaving only silence and a lesson written in fire.